386 AD. Somewhere between Iceland and Greenland, the ship rises on a wave, the height of a 3-story building. For a moment, it hangs there, suspended between gray sky and black water. Then it drops. 53 men grip the oak planks beneath them. Their knuckles are white. Their beards are frozen stiff. The temperature has dropped to -26 Celsius, -15 Fahrenheit, and the wind makes it feel like -40, the same number in both scales, the point where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet in pure misery. There is no cabin, no walls, no heating system, just an open wooden vessel, 80 feet long, surrounded by 1,000 miles of the most hostile ocean on Earth. The spray hits them like shattered glass. It freezes on contact. Their woolen cloaks are soaked through, for their leather boots have been wet for 3 days straight. And yet, not a single man will die of hypothermia on this crossing. When Bjarni Herjólfsson's ship finally reaches the coast of Greenland, after 14 days of being blown off course, all 53 men walk off that vessel alive. Cold, exhausted, but alive. How? Modern survival experts calculate that an unprotected human in these conditions, -26 Celsius, -15 Fahrenheit, constant wind, wet clothing, should die within 3 to 4 hours. The Vikings endured it for 2 weeks. This wasn't luck. This wasn't superhuman tolerance. This was a system. A survival equation that combined ship design, clothing technology, body heat physics, food science, and social organization into something that modern engineers still struggle to fully understand. No furnace, no insulation, no shelter. Just knowledge that took 400 years to develop and 300 years to forget. To understand how Vikings survived the North Atlantic, you first need to understand one material. Wool, not cotton, not linen. Wool, and not just any wool. A specific type from a specific breed of sheep that the Norse had been selectively breeding for over 500 years. The sheep was called the Old Norse breed, ancestor to what we now know as Icelandic sheep. What made it different was its fleece structure. Unlike modern wool that's been bred for softness, Old Norse wool had 2 distinct layers. The outer layer, called tog, consisted of long, coarse fibers up to 15 inches in length. These fibers were naturally water-resistant. Not waterproof, but water-resistant. And they could absorb up to 30% of their weight in moisture before feeling wet to the touch. The inner layer, called thell, was short, fine, and incredibly dense. This created millions of tiny air pockets close to the skin. Here's where the physics becomes critical. Air is one of the best insulators known to science. Still air has a thermal conductivity of just 0.024 watts per meter Kelvin. For comparison, water's thermal conductivity is 0.58, more than 20 times higher. Wet cotton against your skin is essentially a heat-sucking machine. But wool's cellular structure traps air even when damp. Those millions of thell fibers create dead air spaces that don't collapse when wet. The heat your body generates stays close to your skin instead of bleeding into the environment. The Vikings wore this wool in layers. And the base layer was a len, a long woolen tunic worn directly against the skin. Above that, a kirtle, a heavier wool garment. And over everything, a cloak called a muttle, often treated with lanolin to increase water resistance. Modern testing of replica Viking garments shows this layering system could maintain core body temperature in conditions down to -29 Celsius, -20 Fahrenheit, as long as the person kept moving. That's a critical caveat. Movement generates metabolic heat. Sitting still in the cold kills you. The Vikings knew this. On open ocean crossings, there were no passengers. Everyone worked. Rowing, bailing, adjusting sail, managing cargo. The physical labor wasn't just transportation necessity. It was survival strategy. Caloric mathematics proved this. A sedentary adult male burns roughly 1,800 calories per day. The same man doing heavy physical labor burns 4,000 to 5,000 calories. That difference, 2,200 to 3,200 extra calories, converts directly to heat. At roughly 4 calories per kilocalorie, that's an additional 9 to 13 watts of constant body heat production. It doesn't sound like much until you multiply it by 50 men in close proximity. 50 men generating 13 extra watts each equals 650 watts of additional heat. That's equivalent to running 3 space heaters on low. Except these heaters are distributed throughout the vessel, warming the air around each man. The Vikings didn't have thermodynamic equations, but they had 4 centuries of empirical observation. They knew that an idle ship was a dead ship. Work was warmth. Jock, but wool and movement alone couldn't solve the sleeping problem. And that's where Viking engineering got genuinely innovative. Every survival expert knows that night is when hypothermia kills. Metabolic rate drops during sleep. Movement stops. The body's heat production falls by 30 to 40%. This is when the cold catches up. The Vikings solved this with 3 interlocking technologies: the húðfat, the reindeer skin, and the buddy system. The húðfat, literally skin bag, was a large sack made from walrus-hide, or heavy cowhide, treated with fish oil until it was nearly waterproof. Archaeological remains from the Oseberg ship burial, dated to 834 AD, show evidence of these bags among the ship's equipment. A single húðfat could fit 2 to 3 men. The men would climb inside, fully clothed, pulling the bag closed around their necks. The thick hide blocked wind completely and trapped body heat inside. But the real engineering came from what went inside the bag. Reindeer skins. Reindeer fur is unique among animal pelts. Each individual hair is hollow. Under a microscope, you can see it. A tiny tube filled with air. This evolved to insulate reindeer in Arctic temperatures down to -40 Celsius, -40 Fahrenheit. When used as a sleeping surface and covering, reindeer skins create an insulation layer with an R value estimated between 6 and 8. For context, a modern synthetic sleeping bag rated to -29 Celsius, -20 Fahrenheit, typically has an R value of 5 to 6. The Vikings were sleeping in equipment that exceeded modern standards. But here's what most people miss: the social engineering. Vikings never slept alone at sea. The húðfat bags were designed for multiple occupants, specifically because body heat compounds. One man in a sleeping bag loses heat to the environment. 2 men in the same bag lose heat to each other, and that heat stays in the system. This is basic thermodynamics. 2 human bodies in an enclosed space will warm that space to equilibrium. 3 bodies even faster. The arrangement was systematic. Crew members were assigned sleeping partners based on watch rotation. When one man woke for duty, his body heat had already pre-warmed the bag for the man replacing him. The bag never went cold. There's a reason the sagas don't mention sleeping arrangements as suffering. Njál's saga, Egil's saga, the Vinland sagas, they describe storms, starvation, combat. But they rarely complain about cold during sleep, because the sleeping system worked. Now let's talk about the part that surprises most people: fire. Conventional wisdom says you couldn't have fire on a wooden ship. The Vikings disagreed. Archaeological evidence from multiple ship finds, including Skuldelev I, a Knar-type cargo vessel recovered from Roskilde Fjord, shows sand-lined boxes called øretog built into the ships. These were cooking stations. The box was roughly 2 feet by 3 feet, lined with sand or clay several inches deep. A small fire could be lit on the sand without risk to the wooden hull below. The fires weren't for heating. Heating an open vessel in Atlantic winds would require burning the ship itself. The fires were for cooking, specifically for hot meals. Once hot food matters more than people realize. Digestion is an exothermic process. Your body generates heat breaking down food, but the temperature of the food itself also matters. Consuming hot porridge or stew transfers thermal energy directly into your core. A meal of hot barley porridge at 65 Celsius, 150 Fahrenheit, delivers roughly 180 calories of direct thermal energy to the body, beyond the nutritional calories. That's a measurable boost to core temperature at exactly the times it's needed most. Morning and evening, when ambient temperatures are lowest. The Vikings ate hot meals twice daily when weather permitted. The cooking box was as essential as the sail. But what happened when storms made cooking impossible? If you're starting to realize that Viking survival was an engineering system, not primitive toughness, you're getting it. Subscribe, because we're about to cover what actually happened when 50 men faced 2 weeks of storms, and why the system sometimes failed in ways that changed history. The Greenland crossings have death tolls that prove the limits of even the best engineering. Summer, 1001 AD. Leif Erikson's expedition, 35 men aboard a single canard. Destination: the land Bjarni Herjólfsson had spotted 16 years earlier. What would become Vinland, modern Newfoundland. The crossing from Greenland should take 6 to 8 days with favorable winds. The reality will be different. Day 1. They depart from Brattahlid, Erik the Red settlement on Greenland's southwest coast. Conditions are good. Light wind from the northeast. Temperature around 4 Celsius on 40 Fahrenheit. Warm by North Atlantic standards. The men settle into rhythm. 8 on the oars, 12 managing the sail, 15 resting. They'll rotate every 4 hours. The canard moves at roughly 6 knots. The wool system activates. The wet woolen cloaks still trap air. The inner layers, the lane, the kirtil, are protected by the outer metal taking the brunt. Body heat from rowing maintains core temperature. The system works, but it's working at the edge. Day 4. The storm intensifies. Wind now gusting to 50 knots. The seas are running 20 feet. The canard is taking water faster than the bailers can remove it. This is when Viking ship design proves itself. The canard's hull is clinker-built, overlapping planks fastened with iron rivets. Modern engineers have tested this construction method and found something unexpected. The planks flex. Where a rigid modern hull fights the waves and eventually cracks, the Viking hull absorbs impact by allowing the planks to shift millimeters against each other. The ship groans. It creaks. It sounds like it's dying, so it's actually surviving. The men hear their vessel crying out in the storm, and they keep bailing. They've heard this before. Their fathers heard it. Their grandfathers heard it. The ship is designed to scream. Day 5. Temperature drops. The storm has pushed them north. The air temperature falls to negative 23 Celsius, negative 10 Fahrenheit. Wind chill, negative 46 Celsius, negative 50 Fahrenheit. Now the cold becomes critical. Wet clothing that worked at 4 Celsius, 40 Fahrenheit, becomes dangerous at negative 23 Celsius, negative 10 Fahrenheit. The wool's air trapping capacity has limits. Beyond negative 26 Celsius, negative 15 Fahrenheit, heat loss exceeds heat production, even with heavy labor. The húðfat bags come out. Men rotate in shifts of 2 hours. Row until exhaustion, then into the sleeping bags with a partner. 15 minutes of intense shivering, the body's emergency heat generation response, then sleep. Wake before the partner leaves. Back to rowing. No one sits idle. No one rests outside the bags. Those are death sentences. The hot meals stop. Waves extinguish any fire in the cooking box. The men eat cold, dried fish, hard cheese, butter mixed with dried meat. The calories sustain them, but they miss the thermal transfer of hot food. Day 7. The storm breaks. The wind drops to 15 knots. The sun appears for the first time in 4 days. Temperature rises to -7 Celsius, 20 Fahrenheit. It feels tropical. The men spread their cloaks on the rigging to dry. They light the cooking fire for the first time in 3 days. Hot porridge made from barley and dried fish. A modern nutritionist would note, roughly 800 calories, 65 Celsius, 150 Fahrenheit, delivering both metabolic fuel and direct thermal energy. The men would note, they feel human again. Days 8 through 14, recovery and navigation. The storm blew them off course. Leif's navigator, likely using sun compass and latitude sailing, calculates their position. They're north of their intended track. They adjust south. On day 14, they sight land. Forested coastline. No ice. They've reached what Leif will call Vinland. 35 men embark. 35 men arrive. 0 fatalities from cold. The system worked. But the system doesn't always work. There's a number that Viking romantics don't like to discuss. Between 985 AD, when Eric the Red established the Greenland colony, and 1350 AD, historical records document approximately 3,500 attempted crossings between Greenland, Iceland, and Scandinavia. Of those crossings, ship losses numbered in the hundreds. The sagas don't give exact figures. They weren't census documents, but they mention lost ships with distressing regularity. Grenlandinga Saga records that of 25 ships that set out from Iceland to Greenland in 986 AD, the main colonization fleet, only 14 arrived. 11 ships, carrying perhaps 500 people, vanished. This wasn't a failure of the survival system. It was a demonstration of its limits. The survival system assumed the ship survived. If the hull cracked, if the sail tore beyond repair, if the vessel capsized in a wave, no amount of wool, no húðfat bags, no body heat calculation would save you. As water temperature in the North Atlantic between Iceland and Greenland averages 2 to 4 Celsius, 35 to 40 Fahrenheit in summer. Survival time in those waters, 15 to 45 minutes. The Vikings knew this. Every man who boarded a ship for a Greenland crossing understood. The line between survival and death was the vessel itself. Keep the ship intact, and the system would keep them alive. Lose the ship, and they were dead before they could feel cold. This is why Viking shipbuilding was religious. The Oseberg ship burial didn't just include a vessel. It included the tools to maintain it. Axes, drills, rivets, spare planks. The ship was a living thing that required constant attention. On long crossings, men spent hours between watches checking rivets, recaulking seams with tarred wool, reinforcing stressed joints. This wasn't busy work. This was life or death maintenance. The system worked if, and only if, every component worked. Wool, labor, body heat, sleeping rotation, hot meals, ship integrity. Remove any element, and the equation failed. This is what modern survival training misses when it studies the Vikings. They don't see a collection of techniques. They see isolated skills, clothing, shelter, food. The Vikings understood systems. In 1893, a Norwegian named Magnus Andersen built an exact replica of the Gokstad ship, a 9th century Viking vessel excavated from a burial mound. He sailed it across the Atlantic from Norway to Newfoundland with a crew of 12. The voyage took 28 days. They encountered storms, freezing temperatures, and equipment failures. Every man survived. Anderson's journal notes his surprise at the ship's behavior in heavy seas. The hull flexed exactly as the original builders intended. The vessel rode waves that would have broken a rigid hull. A century later, in 2016, the Draken Harald Hårfagre, the largest Viking ship reconstruction ever built, crossed the Atlantic with a crew of 32. They used traditional methods where possible: wool clothing, leather boots, húðfat style sleeping arrangements. They documented internal temperatures, metabolic rates, and heat loss patterns. Their findings matched the historical record almost exactly. In temperatures down to -23 Celsius, -10 Fahrenheit, with proper wool layering and work rotation, core body temperatures remained stable. The sleeping bag system maintained safe temperatures through nights that dropped to -29 Celsius, -20 Fahrenheit. The one modern addition they couldn't avoid: emergency beacon. Because the system has a failure mode. If the ship goes down, everyone dies. That math hasn't changed in 1,000 years. Today, the Greenland crossing route, Disco Bay to Iceland, is still considered one of the most dangerous sailing passages in the world. Modern yachts with GPS, weather satellites, emergency rafts, and satellite phones still lose crews. The Vikings did it in open boats with wool and body heat. They didn't have better technology. They had better systems. Here's what we've lost: not the wool. You can still buy Icelandic wool, not the ship designs. The Roskilde Viking Ship Museum has blueprints for anyone who wants them. What we've lost is the understanding that survival isn't about equipment. It's about integration. Modern outdoor gear is remarkable. Synthetic insulation that weighs ounces. Gore-Tex that blocks water while allowing vapor transfer. Battery-heated gloves and GPS distress beacons. Yet every year, people with thousands of dollars in modern equipment die in conditions that Viking farmers survived routinely. Because they have gear. They don't have systems. The Vikings couldn't afford to think about clothing separately from labor, separately from food, separately from sleep. Every element fed into every other element. Change one variable, and you had to recalculate the entire equation. Eat cold food? You'll need more wool or more movement. Sleep alone? None. You'll need more calories or shorter sleep cycles. Work less? You'll need hotter food or better shelter. Everything connected. The North Atlantic didn't care about your best gear. It only cared about your worst link. 50 men on an open ship at -34 Celsius, -30 Fahrenheit. No cabin, no furnace, no modern insulation. They lived because they understood something we've forgotten. Survival is not a product. It's a process. If you want to understand how Vikings applied this same system's thinking to their homes, and why modern insulation often fails where medieval methods succeeded, watch the video on screen now. The physics will change how you think about the walls around you.